All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Lael Goodman. I'm the Environmental Justice Program Manager at North Brooklyn Neighbors. And I'm here today with Edric. Edric, would you be able to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Edric and I'm the Community Engagement Fellow at North Brooklyn Neighbors.
Thank you. So today we are chatting with Dr. Judith Zelikoff. She is a professor in the Department of Environmental Medicine at NYU Langone and the Director of Community Engagement Core for the NIEHS, National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences at the NYU Core Center. She has an extensive background in respiratory health, focusing her research on the effects of inhaled toxicants on the immune and reproductive systems. We are really glad that she's here today to answer some questions for us that have been surfacing in our North Brooklyn community surrounding the COVID-19 epidemic. Hi, Judy.
Hi, thank you, Lael. There's so many things that are going on and things are changing minute by minute. So I'm going to try to answer the questions. There's a lot of myths out there. I'm going to try to dispel some of the myths that are not true and bring you up to speed.
Wonderful. So first question. So here in North Brooklyn, we actually have less access to open space than in a lot of other parts of New York City. For example, in 2005, we were promised a park, Bushwick Inlet Park. It has yet to open and is behind closed a fence. We can't access it. Another one of our parks has been targeted as one that's been overcrowded. So people have questions. How, in a lot of places when you're walking on the path, it's really difficult to maintain that 6 feet of social distancing. How worried should people be if they're walking by somebody outside in the park and they're not able to maintain that 6 feet?
The answer to that is don't worry. If you're wearing your mask and you're walking just normal pace, if you're concerned, just turn your head. Look in the other direction. Oftentimes when I'm in the supermarket and someone passes me down the aisle, I just turn my head into the groceries. I don't think that's really not a problem at all. The problem arises if someone is to pass you and then cough or look in your direction and cough or sneeze, and someone who doesn't have a mask on. That's why wearing a mask is still very, very important. Just keep up your normal pace, walk past people, and that should not be a problem for community members at all.
Awesome. It's really reassuring to hear that. I know for me, I barely stepped outside for a month and everything went on pause. And I know a lot of other people have been avoiding contact outside, but we also know that being outside in green spaces can have a lot of health benefits, both physically and also mentally.
Mm-hmm.
And so how would you talk through with someone in those moments when they're weighing the mental and physical health benefits of venturing outside of their home?
I think you pinpointed it very accurately, Edric, and people must combine being in the house, having some structure. That's really important. You get up in the morning, you get dressed, you don't hang out in your pajamas all day. It has to be a real day. And then when you're in between cleaning or working or whatever you're doing at home, make sure you take that hour or half an hour out to go walking. It can be in the park, as we just said. It can be around the block, but it has to be outside. And especially if you're lucky enough to have some kind of sitting area outside or on a deck or a patio or something where you can just sit out and get some sunshine. Vitamin D is very important. They're showing some information that shows that scientists are showing some information that vitamin D is actually very important in the COVID pandemic that's going on now. So you have to have time inside and you have to have time outside. even if you have a friend who lives next door or down the block and you maintain your 6 feet distance, or you both walk together with your masks on, very important, and go around the block. But you have to get outside, you have to get some sunshine. And now that the weather is turning nicer, it will make you sad not to be outside. So we have people around where I live in New Jersey where they pull out a chair and they just sit out. As long as people are sitting outside of 6 feet away from you, everything is cool. Should not worry.
Awesome. I've definitely also pulled out a chair and kind of just sat outside when I can. As we talk about good weather and as we think about summer coming as well, some people in our community don't have access to air conditioning in their homes.
Yeah.
And usually the city is providing public pools or cooling centers where people can stay and rest for a little bit. But
Right.
as we kind of wait for the city's advice and what the city is going to do about these cooling centers, how can a person at risk deal with this impending summer heat risk?
Well, one of the words that you said that's very important that I just want to pause at is at risk. This is COVID virus is very it's for people at risk. It's more of an issue. It's more of a concern. And so, what do we mean by people at risk? We mean pregnant women. We mean especially the elderly. We mean people with ongoing diseases like cardiovascular disease or pulmonary disease, and we mean children. Let's not forget what's happening now with Kawasaki disease and children. So these are the people that may not regulate the temperature as well, may become have high temperatures and feel the heat more. So what can we do? We can, of course, open the windows, and that's really good for now. It's springtime, but as the weather gets warmer, what do we do? So there are things to do. Make sure you have rags or hand towels that you can soak in ice water and place it around your neck, place it on your wrists. These are all sensitive points, thermal points. Around on your forehead if you really feel that you're getting dizzy. But walking around with rags on your neck is really important, especially when they're cold. So you may have to change them. Also, drinking a lot of water. So people think, oh, well, I guess coffee counts and I guess tea counts. Well, those can act as diuretics also, which means that they go in, they come out. So you want to drink water, seltzer, juice, but be careful. You know, if you're a diabetic, you don't want to have a lot of sugar, but you do want to have liquids, and that will keep you hydrated. So the most important things that you can do is drink a lot of fluids, particularly water-based fluids. And what do we mean by a lot? We often hear a lot. So 8-ounce container, maybe 5 of them, bottled water. And so drink a lot, stay hydrated, cool rags around your neck and around your wrists, and reduce your activity.
Okay, that is very helpful. We often hear air conditioning. And so having these other tips, which probably some people who have air conditioning could also use to stay cool. So that's very helpful. Thank you. Speaking of at-risk groups, in doing reading about all of this and paying attention to issues of air quality, seen from a number of different sources that there are some links between poor air quality and increased risk from COVID-19. Here in North Brooklyn, we have a number of residents who live near things like the Brooklyn Queens Express, out for certain industrial facilities that their emissions impact the air quality. What would you say to people who live in these places about COVID-19?
Well, you're right, Lael. There's definitely more and more emerging literature from scientists, and that's a key thing. When you're seeking out information, please follow the science, please follow the CDC, the WHO, and your state and federal guidelines, because they're really important. So yes, air pollution, more and more literature is saying that what happens when you breathe in high air particulates, these particles called PM, particulate matter in the air, very small, can be inhaled very easily, and they're given off by trucks and high traffic. And what we found with these air pollutants is that they can cause what we call inflammation. And inflammation is also what COVID causes in the lungs. So it could act and it could combine and act together. So you want to be cautious. Now, the hot weather coming, and of course you want to keep your windows open, especially in the spring and times like now, which is beautiful out. But when you open the windows, of course, you're getting more air pollutants, especially living on major highways. And so people at higher risk want to be especially cautious of that. And as far as the walks, as we just talked about, if you want to go walking, you definitely want to find a place to go, maybe the park. And as I said, just keep walking, put your mask on, and if you're concerned, turn in the opposite direction when you see a person coming. You want to get away from the air pollution, especially if you're a high risk group. So keep your windows closed if there's a lot of traffic. Although we know that 70% of all air pollution gets into the home. You could try circulating, get fans. Fans are helpful. But be very cautious for high-risk people who are going out for their mental health, for getting some fresh air and some sunshine. Be careful where you walk. You don't want to walk near the highway. You try to go somewhere where there's more trees and less cars, because there is an emerging link.
Okay, so that brings me to another question that you kind of already touched on. So if people are, staying indoors, you said, put on fans. Are there any other actions people can take to make sure that their indoor air quality is as healthy as possible?
That's a very good question. So during these high pollution days, beware of smoking and vaping, for one thing. Also, there's a link now between smoking and vaping and COVID and the risk for COVID. So again, inflammation in the lungs adds to and makes you more susceptible for infections in general. And so you want to be aware of other things that cause air pollution in the home. So smoking, vaping, even your stoves, even cooking can release particles into the air. So there are many things that can add to the indoor pollution. So be careful with your cooking extensively, and people who might be more at risk, maybe they should stay in the room or in the living room and maybe not in the kitchen. Definitely smoking. If you're still smoking, go outside. Don't do it in the home, because that could more than triple your air pollution particle levels in the home.
Okay, so it sounds like some summer salads. One other thing that's been coming up a lot is antibody tests. We see them being offered kind of everywhere in New York these days. But we're hearing reports that they're unreliable. Do you have any advice? Should we get tested? Who should get tested? Also, in general, what I've learned in science is that antibodies do help with immunity.
Mm-hmm.
Why are there concerns that antibodies might not?
Okay, so first, Lael, I'd like to just say what an antibody is, because these words are being thrown around, and, you know, people are questioning what is an antibody. And not to be scientific, but it is a molecule. It's actually a protein that is made in response to infectious agents. And our immune system, that's its main function, is to protect us from not only viruses, but bacterial infections and tumors, tumors that are arising. And so it's very important that we have a competent, full strength antibodies, full strength immunity. And unfortunately, as we get older, and it starts, our immune system starts to decline in terms of competence. Let's just say we're not what we used to be. And younger people in their 20s, they do have a full-blown immune system, but as we age, the power of the immune system declines. So, okay, so an antibody is one part of our host that puts out these protective mechanisms, these protective actions. And there are many different types of antibodies. When you're sick early on, you form what's known as antibodies or immunoglobulins that are of a type M. And there are also names that are called IgG. And IgG are those antibodies that form a little bit later, right after the infection, maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, and they protect you for longer periods of time. So the antibody tests, there are antibody tests that test for IgM. Do you have an ongoing reaction? Are you active in your infection? Has it just ended? The IgG, which most test kits are using, the immunoglobulin G, are those antibodies which are formed and last for a while. So just having the antibodies doesn't mean that you're immune. There are many different viruses, many different infections, which you can have immunity for your whole life, like smallpox. Once you get a smallpox vaccine, you are protected your whole life. Once you get the flu, you know that you have to be tested, or you have to get a vaccine every year. So vaccines and immunity don't necessarily last forever. Now, where are we now? Where the scientists are not sure how long these antibodies that you're making will be effective for. Will they be like smallpox? Will it grant you immunity for your whole life? Will it grant you immunity for a week? Will it grant you immunity for a month? So until that's known, that's difficult to predict. The other thing is that in order for antibodies to give you the immunity that you need, it must be effective. So just by knowing you have antibodies present does not mean they are the type of antibody that you need to protect you against virally infected cells. So what kind of antibodies do we need? We need those antibodies that are called neutralizing antibodies that can help kill the virally infected cells. Viruses, no matter what type, including all the coronaviruses and coronavirus 19, they don't live very long outside the body. But once they get in the body, they take over the individual cells, and they are little reproducing units. They make more and more and more within different cells of the body. And so you make antibodies, the body is doing what it needs to do. But right now, the idea of someone being recovered from it and having full immunity or having even partial immunity is not clear. So should we go out and test for antibodies? Sure, sure, because as the science catches up with this new virus, it will be able to let you know how long you might be immune for and whether those are the antibodies that will neutralize the virus.
It's really great to have an expert talk to us about these things because I feel like there's so much information being thrown around out there by politicians, by media outlets, on social media, and especially with information changing so often day to day. What sources do you recommend for accurate and up-to-date information on COVID?
So I'm a scientist. I follow the science. The science for me that I will rely on, and again, you said it, Edric, and that is that it's changing every few days, every few minutes, and we have to keep up. Who do we trust? Well, we trust the scientists, and we trust the CDC. No one's perfect. No agency is perfect. No scientist. Oh my goodness, I shouldn't say this, but no scientist is perfect. And when I say perfect, all we can do is make predictions and spread knowledge with the information that we have right now. Okay, we can do some predictions based on what we know now, but things are changing so fast. So I read the CDC. I read, despite any disputes over the WHO, I agree with the WHO. It's the World Health Organization, and they have a global perspective on things. The CDC, the Center for Disease Control, has a more national perspective on things. The NIH, the National Institute of Health, any of the institutes from the National Institute of Health. Also science, and following New Jersey science, that you listen to the science that's coming out from your states. Personally, I think the governor of New York is doing an excellent job. I think the governor of New Jersey is doing an excellent job in forwarding the information as it emerges. I have calls with NYU School of Medicine once a week, once every 2 weeks, and the information changes drastically from week to week because what we're learning is changing drastically. And what I can tell you is there is hope. And if you follow the science across the nation, you'll see that many, many things are emerging, many, many things that we're learning. And through knowledge, there will be more, not only hope, but actual practices that can be put into place. So I know we're all hoping for a vaccine. The reality of that is while many of the clinical trials and pharmaceutical companies is very, very promising, but there's a long way to go to make sure that it's tested properly and that people don't have tremendous side effects. And that's a very important thing. There was a vaccine developed many, many decades ago that actually killed more people than the actual infection. So we have to take it slow in that we have to make sure that all of people's health is protected.
Okay, so a little bit of caution, but a lot of hope, it sounds like.
Yes.
Well, Dr. Zelikoff, thank you so much for coming and answering these questions. I am excited to share this with the North Brooklyn community.